Get comfortable with English in comfort. This is your English listening practice podcast to help you learn and improve naturally.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to English in Comfort, where we help you learn English in the most chill, cozy, and relaxed way possible. I'm Emily.
And I'm Liam. Thanks for joining us today. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had all these great ideas in your head, but the moment you try to say them out loud, it's like, poof, everything just disappears?
Or when you know exactly what you want to say, but it comes out sounding stiff or awkward, and then you feel like, why did I even try?
Right. Speaking confidently is one of the hardest things to get comfortable with in a new language. It's not just about knowing the words or grammar. It's about how you feel when you're speaking.
And that's what today's episode is all about. We're going to talk about how you can build confidence when speaking English. But don't worry, we're not here to give you some boring lecture.
Nope. Instead, we'll share real, practical ideas and examples. And the best part? We'll be drawing from our own experiences, what worked for us, what didn't, and how we've both learned to speak confidently over time.
Confidence isn't something you're just born with, it's something you can build step by step. And the good news is, it's not as hard as you might think once you know where to start.
So get comfortable, whether you're listening at home, on a walk, or even doing some chores. And let's talk about what it really takes to feel confident when you speak English.
Okay, I feel like I've said this a million times before in our previous episodes, but I'm going to say it again because it's that important. You guys, the key to building confidence is practice and repetition.
I was about to say, Emily, you've practically turned it into your catchphrase at this point. I half expect you to get it printed on a mug. Practice and repetition.
Not a bad idea, actually. But seriously, it's true. You can learn all the grammar rules in the world. You can memorize thousands of vocabulary words. But if you're not practicing, if you're not repeating what you've learned, it's like trying to bake a cake without ever turning the oven on. The ingredients are there, but nothing's coming together.
And I think it's not just about practicing randomly. It's about being intentional with it. Like, if you know you have something specific coming up, like a meeting or a conversation, you can prepare for that.
Yes. For example, if you're going to a job interview or opening a bank account, take some time to think about what you'll likely need to say or hear. Write it down. Practice saying it out loud, and then, here's the trick. Practice it again and again until it feels natural, almost like a mantra you've memorized.
Because when you've practiced enough, you stop worrying about, am I saying this right? And instead, your focus shifts to simply speaking. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, you're thinking about everything. Balance, pedaling, not falling over. But after a while, it just clicks.
And repetition is what gets you to that point. Let's say you're preparing for a big presentation in English. Sure, you can't predict every single question or comment you'll hear, but you can prepare for the most likely ones. You can practice introducing yourself, explaining your main ideas, even transitioning between topics.
And it doesn't have to be just formal situations like meetings or presentations. Everyday conversations work too. Let's say you're going to a cafe. You can practice ordering your favorite drink at home. Hi, I'd like a latte, please. Or, what's your most popular tea? That way, when you're actually in the cafe, you're not thinking, oh no, what do I say?
Right. The more you practice, the more confident you feel because you've already done it in your mind. And this doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes, because you will, and that's okay. But it means you'll be less afraid of those mistakes because you know you're prepared.
And let me just add this. Repetition doesn't have to be boring. You can mix it up. Record yourself practicing, listen back, and see where you can improve. Or even better, practice with someone, a friend, a family member, or even in front of a mirror.
Totally agree. If there's one thing I'd say to anyone listening right now, it's this. Don't underestimate the power of repeating something until it feels second nature. That's how confidence is built, brick by brick, through practice.
One of the biggest lessons I've learned about speaking confidently in English is actually something most people overlook. It's not about using fancy words or having a perfect accent. It's about slowing down.
Slowing down? That's interesting. I feel like we've always been taught that the faster you speak, the more confident you sound. You know, like you're in control or something.
Yeah, that's exactly the misconception. People think speed equals confidence, but it's actually the opposite. When you speak too fast, especially if you're nervous, your pronunciation can suffer, and listeners might struggle to keep up, especially if they're not familiar with your accent.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's not really about what you're saying, but how you're saying it.
Exactly. Here's the thing. When someone doesn't understand you, it's easy to assume, oh no, my English isn't good enough. But in most cases, it's not about your English being wrong. It's just about clarity. Speaking too fast makes it harder for people to follow you, and that can knock your confidence.
Right. When you're nervous, you naturally tend to speak faster without even realizing it.
It's like your brain is racing ahead of your mouth. And that's why slowing down is so powerful. When you consciously focus on your pace, you're not just giving yourself time to think, you're also making it easier for your listener to understand you.
So what would you suggest? Like, how can someone practice speaking more slowly without it feeling unnatural?
Good question. One simple way is to record yourself speaking. Pick a topic, set a timer, and just talk for a minute or two. When you listen back, pay attention to how fast you're speaking and whether your words are clear. You might be surprised how much of a difference it makes when you slow down even slightly.
That's a great tip. I think most people don't even realize how fast they're going until they hear themselves.
Another thing I'd recommend is to practice pausing. For example, if you're giving a presentation or telling a story, take a brief pause after key points. It helps you stay calm and gives your listener a chance to process what you're saying.
And I guess pausing also makes you sound more deliberate, like you're confident in what you're saying because you're not rushing to get it out.
And here's another bonus. When you slow down and pronounce your words more clearly, people won't have to keep asking you to repeat yourself. That alone can give you a huge confidence boost because you'll feel understood the first time.
That's so true. Honestly, it's such a simple adjustment, but it makes a world of difference. Okay, I'm going to share an embarrassing story. One that still makes me cringe to this day.
This sounds good already.
Yeah, good for you maybe. So, back when I was still learning English, we had to do these role-playing exercises in class. You know, where you pretend to order at a restaurant or give a presentation in front of everyone. I was already nervous because I wasn't comfortable with the language yet.
I can already feel where this is going.
Yeah, it was bad. I was supposed to be this customer at a clothing store and I was trying to ask for a different size or something. But instead of saying bigger size, I accidentally said something completely wrong. Like, completely wrong. Everyone laughed and I panicked. And you know what happens when you panic, right?
You start overthinking everything?
It was like my brain just shut down. After that one mistake, I kept stumbling over my words, forgetting what I was supposed to say. And eventually, I just blurted out, "I'm sorry," and sat down. I couldn't even finish the role play.
That's rough. I would have just wanted to disappear into the floor right then and there.
Oh, trust me, I did. And even now, when I think about it, I still feel this secondhand embarrassment for my younger self. But here's the thing I've realized since then. Those awkward moments, they're actually necessary.
Necessary? How do you figure?
Well, at the time, I wanted to avoid anything like that ever again. I wanted to hide every time we had to speak English in class. But the truth is, you can't build confidence by running away from situations that make you uncomfortable. You only get better by facing them head-on.
Makes sense. It's like the more you avoid it, the scarier it gets, right?
And here's another thing I've learned. The key is to prepare. That day, I wasn't ready. I didn't practice enough, I didn't know the vocabulary, and I didn't think about what I'd say if something went wrong. But now, if I know I'm going to be in a situation where I have to speak English, like at work or when traveling, I make sure I'm ready.
But how do you prepare without driving yourself crazy?
It's actually simpler than you'd think. If I know I'll be giving a presentation or having a conversation about a specific topic, I write down possible things I might need to say. Then I practice it out loud, like a lot. And even if I don't get it perfect, I remind myself that it's okay to laugh at mistakes. That's the difference.
So instead of panicking, you just embrace it.
Exactly. These situations can actually be funny if you let them be. And every time you get through one, even if it's awkward, your confidence grows a little bit. It's like a muscle. You have to work it out.
That's a good way to look at it. And honestly, the fact that you can laugh about that classroom story now says a lot.
Yeah, well, I've had plenty of time to get over it, but seriously, if you're listening and you're avoiding speaking because it feels uncomfortable, don't. Just take it one step at a time, be prepared, and remember, even if you mess up, it's not the end of the world.
You know, when I was learning a new language, people would often tell me, "Wow, you seem so confident when you speak." And I'd just nod and smile. But inside, I was thinking, if only they knew.
Oh? So you didn't feel confident at all?
Not even close. But here's the thing. I realized it wasn't about what I was saying. It was about how I carried myself. My posture, my body language. They were tricking people into thinking I was confident. And honestly, it helped me fake it until I started to feel more comfortable.
That's so interesting. So, like standing up straight and making eye contact?
That's right. It's not just about standing up straight, though. It's how you hold yourself overall. For example, I'd make sure my shoulders weren't slouched, my arms weren't crossed, and I'd try to use open gestures when I spoke. Even when I was nervous, those small adjustments made a huge difference in how people perceived me. And eventually, in how I started to feel about myself.
That makes a lot of sense. And you know what? I think breathing ties into that too. Like when we're nervous, we tend to forget how to breathe properly. Our breaths get shallow, and that makes us sound less confident.
Oh, absolutely. That's such a good point. When you focus on taking slow, deep breaths, it not only calms you down, but also makes your voice stronger and steadier.
I know it's happened to me. My voice would come out shaky or too quiet because I wasn't breathing deeply.
Right. And when you combine that with confident body language, it's like you're giving yourself this extra boost. Even if you're nervous, you don't come across that way. How you present yourself can sometimes matter just as much as the words you're using.
Exactly.
So, if you're listening to this, try it out. Stand tall, breathe deeply, and use open body language. You might be surprised by how much more confident you feel and sound.
You know, I think one of the biggest things that holds people back from speaking confidently is this obsession with getting everything perfect. Like, every word, every grammar rule, every pronunciation has to be spot on. And honestly, that's exhausting. When I finally stopped worrying about perfection and started focusing on just getting my message across, everything changed. I mean, think about it. When you're having a conversation, the goal isn't to deliver a flawless speech. It's to connect, to share ideas, to communicate. And I'll admit, it wasn't easy to shift that mindset. I used to freeze up if I realized I made a mistake, like, oh no, I said the wrong tense, or did I pronounce that word wrong? But then I noticed something. Most people didn't even care. They were just listening to what I was trying to say. So now, when I speak, I focus on transmitting the message. If I make a mistake, I keep going. I laugh it off if I need to, but I don't let it stop me. It's honestly so freeing. Another thing I realized is that when you're caught up in being perfect, you actually come across as less confident. You hesitate more, you overthink everything, and that makes you sound unsure. But when you let go of that pressure, your words flow more naturally, and you seem more self-assured, even if you slip up here and there. So, for anyone listening, here's my advice. Don't aim for perfection. Aim to be understood. If you're nervous about making mistakes, remind yourself that mistakes are part of learning. And honestly, they make you more relatable. People aren't expecting you to be perfect. They're just trying to understand you. Take a deep breath, focus on your message, and trust that you're doing better than you think. Well, I really hope this conversation gave you some new ideas to try and, most importantly, a little more confidence to keep practicing.
Thanks for spending your time with us. We'll be back soon with more tips and conversations to help you improve your English.
Absolutely.
Take care, everyone.
Before we end, let's quickly go over some words and phrases we use today to make sure they're clear. Shift, meaning a change in position, direction, or focus. Example: I made a shift in my learning routine to focus more on speaking. Pace, meaning the speed at which something happens. Example: I like to practice speaking English at a slower pace so I can focus on pronunciation. Mantra, meaning a phrase or saying that you repeat often to motivate yourself or stay focused. Example: my mantra for learning English is practice every day, no excuses. Underestimate, meaning to think something is less important, smaller, or less capable than it actually is. Example: don't underestimate the power of small daily practices to improve your English. Brick by brick, meaning step by step, gradually building something. Example: learning English is like building a wall. You do it brick by brick. Sound deliberate, meaning to speak in a clear and purposeful way. Example: when you slow down, you sound more deliberate and confident. Stumbling over, meaning to have difficulty saying something clearly or correctly. Example: I used to stumble over long words, but with practice, I've gotten better. Catchphrase, meaning a popular phrase or expression often associated with someone. Example: my teacher's catchphrase was, practice makes perfect. Racing ahead, meaning moving too quickly without paying attention to details. Example: if you're racing ahead while speaking, it's easy to make mistakes. These explanations help make the words and phrases we use today even clearer. Keep them in mind and try using them in your practice.